The massive space station times, convergence times, hung like a gleaming jewel against the black canvas of space, its crystalline towers reaching outward in impossible spirals. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for the annual Galactic Technology Exhibition, where each civilization showcased their greatest achievements and innovations. Commander Zex Thul of the Vraxian Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor plates as he surveyed the grand exhibition hall. His species had dominated galactic politics for over 3 millennia, their plasma weaponry and quantum shields making them nearly unstoppable in warfare. Today, however, was about peaceful competition and cultural exchange. The hall buzzed with alien languages, the universal translator struggling to keep up with the excited chatter. Holographic displays showed off everything from Kanthari bioenhancement pods to Nexarian time distortion devices. In one corner, the insectoid Zephyrians demonstrated their hive mind communication networks, while the gaseous ethereals showcased their ability to phase through solid matter at will. Then Zexthul noticed something unusual. A small section of the hall had drawn a crowd of aliens, all pointing and making what the translator identified as derisive sounds. He moved closer, his curiosity piqued. At the center of the commotion stood a simple display case containing what appeared to be an ancient metal blade. The weapon was elegant in its simplicity. A curved steel sword with a worn leather grip and a modest guard. A small placard read, "Traditional Japanese Katana, Earth's Contribution to Galactic Heritage." "Can you believe this?" chittered Klex, a multi-armed arachnoid diplomat. The humans sent a primitive metal stick as their greatest achievement. A towering Gorathian warrior, whose species was known for their molecular disruptors, let out a booming laugh. "My ancestors were crafting energy weapons when these humans were still discovering fire, and they present us with..." Zexthul examined the blade more closely. The craftsmanship was undeniably excellent. The metal showed signs of careful folding and tempering, and the curve was mathematically precise. But compared to the plasma cannons and force field generators on display around them, it seemed almost comically outdated. "Perhaps they're making a historical point?" suggested Dr. Irelia, a serpentine Naxarian scholar. "Showing us where they came from before they developed their current technology?" "Current technology?" scoffed the Gorathian. "Have you seen their military specifications? Railguns and chemical explosives. They're barely past the atomic age." More aliens gathered, drawn by the laughter and conversation. Soon, a small crowd surrounded the human display, treating it as an amusing curiosity rather than a serious exhibition piece. Some took holographic pictures to share with friends back home, while others made jokes about primitive human warfare. Ambassador Kethara, a graceful being from the crystalline world of Luxaria, materialized near the display through her species' natural teleportation ability. "I've studied human history. That's mentations," she announced to the crowd. This samurai blade was considered the ultimate weapon by their warrior class for over 1,000 years. They believed it contained their soul. This statement only increased the laughter. "Their soul? In a piece of metal?" wheezed a gaseous ethereal. "How quaint. Next they'll tell us they thought their ancestors lived in the clouds." Zexthul found himself oddly disturbed by the mockery, though he couldn't explain why. There was something about the blade that suggested purpose beyond its simple appearance. The wear patterns on the handle spoke of countless hours of training. The slight curve of the steel seemed designed for a specific type of motion, optimized through generations of refinement. "Where are the human representatives?" asked someone in the crowd. "Probably embarrassed," came the reply. "I heard they sent only a small delegation, 2 adults and a child. If you can believe it. They're likely hiding in their quarters." As if summoned by the comment, the crowd parted to reveal 3 humans approaching the display. The 2 adults, a middle-aged woman in formal diplomatic attire, and an elderly man wearing what appeared to be traditional Japanese clothing, walked with quiet dignity, despite the obvious mockery surrounding them. But it was the third member of their group that caught everyone's attention. A small human child, no more than 11 years old by their species' aging standards, walked between the adults. The boy wore a simple black outfit and carried himself with unusual poise for someone so young. "Ah, the humans arrive," announced the Gorathian warrior. "Please, tell us about your impressive contribution to galactic technology." The diplomatic woman stepped forward, her face maintaining professional composure despite the obvious insult. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation. This is Master Takeshi Yamamoto, our cultural attaché, and his student, Kenji Nakamura." "Student?" Klex's multiple eyes focused on the young boy. "You brought a child to a technology exhibition?" Master Yamamoto bowed slightly, a gesture that seemed to amuse several aliens. "Kenji-kun represents the future of our traditions. He has trained in the way of the sword since he could walk." This statement sent fresh waves of laughter through the crowd. "Trained with metal sticks?" the ethereal gasped. "In an age of energy weapons and quantum technology?" Young Kenji remained silent, his dark eyes moving calmly from alien to alien. There was something unsettling about his composure. While the mockery clearly affected the adults, the boy seemed completely unbothered by it. "Tell me, young human," Zexthul found himself saying, stepping closer to the group, "what makes this ancient weapon worth displaying among our greatest technological achievements?" Kenji looked up at the towering Vraxian commander. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady, despite his age. "With respect, Commander, you're asking the wrong question." The laughter in the crowd began to die down as aliens strained to hear what the child would say next. "The question isn't what makes the blade special," Kenji continued. "The question is what the blade reveals about the one who wields it." Klex scuttled closer, his interest piqued despite himself. "And what does it reveal, small human?" Kenji's eyes never wavered from Zexthul's imposing figure. "It reveals whether someone understands that the most advanced technology in the galaxy is worthless in the hands of someone who lacks the discipline to use it properly." The exhibition hall grew noticeably quieter. Several aliens exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to such a statement from a child. The Gorathian warrior stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the small human. "Brave words from someone carrying primitive metal. Would you care to demonstrate this? Discipline you speak of?" Master Yamamoto moved protectively closer to his student, but Kenji raised a small hand to stop him. "If the honored representatives would be interested in a demonstration, I would be happy to oblige." Ambassador Chen looked alarmed. "Kenji, that's not why we're here. This is a cultural exchange. Not a—" "Actually," interrupted Zexthul, his tactical mind suddenly engaged, "I believe I would like to see this demonstration. If the young human is confident enough to speak of discipline and proper technique, perhaps he can show us what we're missing." The crowd began to murmur with excitement. The idea of watching a human child play with an ancient weapon while surrounded by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations struck many as entertainment. "Very well," Kenji said simply. He turned to Master Yamamoto, who hesitated for a long moment, before nodding slowly. The elderly man approached the display case and, after a brief conversation with security, carefully removed the katana from its stand. The blade caught the station's artificial lighting as he handed it to his student, and for just a moment, it seemed to gleam with an inner light. Kenji accepted the weapon with both hands, bowing deeply before taking a stance that seemed to transform him entirely. Gone was the small child who had walked through the crowd. In his place stood something else, focused, centered, and completely still. The aliens formed a loose circle around him, some recording with various devices, others simply watching with curiosity. Many still wore amused expressions, expecting to witness an awkward display of primitive human customs. Zexthul found himself studying the boy's posture. Despite his young age, every line of Kenji's body spoke of years of training. His feet were positioned with mathematical precision, his weight distributed perfectly, his grip on the weapon both firm and relaxed. "Whenever you're ready, young warrior," called out the Gorathian, his tone still mocking. Kenji closed his eyes and took a slow, deep breath. The exhibition hall grew silent, except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Kenji moved. The motion was so fast that most of the aliens barely registered it. One moment he was standing still. The next, the katana had traced a perfect arc through the air, stopping precisely where it had started. The boy returned to his original stance, as if he had never moved at all. "That's it?" laughed Klex. "A fancy wave of metal? My species can move 4 times that fast, with our combat appendages." But Zexthul was staring at something the others had missed. In the center of their circle, a thin metal cable that had been part of the exhibition hall's holographic projection system was now lying on the floor in 2 perfect pieces. "When did he cut that?" Zexthul muttered, his tactical experience telling him that something significant had just occurred. Master Yamamoto stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. The cable was cut during Kenji-kun's movement. However, the cut was so precise that the 2 pieces remained in position until gravity eventually pulled them apart. Dr. Irelia slithered closer to examine the severed cable. Her species had some of the most advanced optical sensors in the galaxy, capable of detecting minute details invisible to most others. "Impossible," she whispered. "The cut is perfectly smooth. Our own plasma tools leave more surface distortion than this." The mockery in the crowd began to transform into genuine curiosity. How had a primitive metal blade achieved such precision? "Perhaps the metal has been enhanced with technology you haven't revealed?" suggested Klex, his scientific mind seeking a rational explanation. Kenji shook his head. "The blade is exactly as it appears. Folded steel, created using techniques that are over 1,000 years old. No energy enhancement, no quantum modifications, no technological augmentation of any kind." "Then how?" began the ethereal, but Kenji interrupted with a slight bow. "The blade is not the weapon," he said quietly. "The mind is the weapon. The body is the weapon. The spirit is the weapon. This," he indicated the katana, "is merely the tool through which they express themselves." Ambassador Chen watched the exchange with growing amazement. She had expected this demonstration to be a cultural footnote, a brief moment before the serious technological discussions began. Instead, she was witnessing something that seemed to genuinely puzzle some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Zexthul's military training was screaming warnings at him. In 3 millennia of Vraxian expansion, they had encountered countless weapons and fighting techniques. Energy weapons that could vaporize matter, kinetic projectiles that could punch through starship hulls, bioweapons that could adapt to any defense. But he had never seen anything quite like what this human child had just demonstrated. "The precision," he said slowly. "How is it achieved?" "Years of training," Master Yamamoto replied. "Kenji-kun has practiced the basic cuts 10,000 times. Each movement has been refined through countless repetitions until it becomes as natural as breathing." 10,000 repetitions of the same motion? The Gorathian warrior sounded incredulous. "To what purpose? Any modern targeting system can achieve perfect accuracy without such obsession. Can it?" Kenji asked, his young voice carrying a strange authority. "Your targeting systems rely on sensors, processors, and calculations. What happens when those systems fail? What happens when you encounter something your technology cannot process?" The question hung in the air. Several of the alien representatives shifted uncomfortably, perhaps remembering battles where advanced technology had indeed failed at crucial moments. Klex scuttled closer to the boy, his multiple eyes studying him intently. "You speak of failure, young human, but you have never faced real combat. You have never experienced the chaos of battle, where split-second decisions determine survival." Kenji's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes seemed to deepen. Master Yamamoto? With your permission? The elderly teacher nodded slowly. Show them the second form. What happened next would be discussed in alien military academies for decades to come. Kenji moved through a series of techniques that seemed to defy several known laws of physics. The katana became a blur of motion, creating geometric patterns in the air with such speed and precision that the station's sensors struggled to track them. But the truly astounding part wasn't the speed, it was the control. Despite the incredible velocity of his movements, Kenji never once came close to striking any of the aliens surrounding him. Every cut, every thrust, every parry was contained within an invisible sphere of perfect spatial awareness. When he finished, the boy was exactly where he had started, not even breathing hard. The silence that followed was profound. Even the ethereal, whose species existed partially outside normal space-time, seemed stunned by what they had witnessed. Dr. Irelia was the first to speak, her voice filled with scientific fascination. The spatial calculations required for such precision, our most advanced computers would need several minutes to plot those trajectories safely. Yet he performed them in real time, Zexthul added, his tactical mind racing. Without any external calculation. Support. Ambassador Chen realized that the mood in the exhibition hall had completely transformed. What had begun as mockery had become something approaching respect, mixed with a healthy dose of confusion. Kenji carefully cleaned the katana with a cloth provided by his master before returning it to its stand. The simple gesture seemed almost ritualistic, performed with the same precision as his sword work. I don't understand, the Gorathian admitted, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine puzzlement. How does practicing with primitive weapons create such capability? What practical application could this possibly have in modern warfare? Master Yamamoto smiled slightly, the first emotion he had shown since arriving at the exhibition. You assume that the sword training is about the sword, but Kenji-kun, please explain what you were really learning all these years. The boy bowed to his master before turning back to the gathered aliens. The sword teaches focus, the ability to concentrate completely on a single point while remaining aware of everything around you. It teaches precision, the difference between close enough and perfect. It teaches patience, the understanding that mastery cannot be rushed or automated. He paused, his young face serious as he continued. Most importantly, it teaches adaptability. Every opponent is different, every situation unique. No computer program can account for every possibility, but a trained mind can respond to anything. Klex's scientific curiosity was fully engaged now. But surely, your modern military forces use advanced weapons and tactics. Why maintain these ancient practices? Ambassador Chen stepped forward, sensing an opportunity to shift the conversation toward the serious matters she had come here to discuss. Our military does indeed use advanced technology. However, the principles Kenji has demonstrated, focus, precision, adaptability, these form the foundation of all our training, regardless of the weapons involved. Are you suggesting, Zexthul asked slowly, that this kind of mental discipline makes your forces more effective than pure technological advancement would? I'm suggesting, Chen replied carefully, that technology is only as good as the mind directing it. A perfectly designed weapon system is useless if the operator lacks the focus to use it properly, the precision to employ it effectively, or the adaptability to respond when conditions change. The implications of her words began to sink in among the gathered aliens. For millennia, galactic civilizations had focused primarily on technological advancement, assuming that superior equipment would always triumph over inferior gear. The idea that mental discipline could be a force multiplier had never seriously been considered. As the crowd began to disperse, many aliens lingered near the human display, studying the simple katana with new eyes. What had seemed like a primitive relic now appeared to be something much more complex. A tool designed not just to cut, but to teach. Zexthul remained after most of the others had left, his gaze alternating between the sword and the small human, who had wielded it with such devastating effectiveness. "Tell me, young Kenji," he said finally. "If your species possesses this kind of training, this level of discipline, why are you considered one of the less advanced civilizations in the galaxy?" Kenji looked up at the towering alien commander, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "advancement isn't just about building better tools. Perhaps it's also about becoming better at using the tools you already have." As the exhibition continued around them, Zex Thul found himself wondering if the galaxy had been measuring advancement wrong all along, and somewhere in the back of his tactical mind, a small voice was suggesting that any species capable of producing warriors like this 11-year-old human might be far more dangerous than anyone had realized. 3 days after the exhibition, the Convergence Station buzzed with nervous energy. Word of the young human's demonstration had spread throughout the diplomatic community, creating discussions and debates in every corridor and conference room. Some dismissed it as an impressive but ultimately meaningless display of physical coordination. Others wondered if there was more to human capabilities than their technological assessments had indicated. Commander Zex Thul stood in the observation deck of the Vraxian quarters, gazing out at the stars while his tactical staff debated behind him. The demonstration had triggered something in his military mind that he couldn't shake. A nagging sense that he had witnessed something significant that everyone was misunderstanding. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Korax, approached with a data pad. "The strategic analysis of the human demonstration is complete." Zex Thul turned, his armored form casting long shadows in the dim lighting. "And the speed and precision measurements confirm what we witnessed. The young human achieved accuracy levels that match our best targeting computers, while moving at velocities that should have made such precision impossible for biological organisms." "Should have made it impossible," Zex Thul repeated, "but clearly didn't. What does that tell us?" Korax hesitated. "Sir, the analysts believe it was an anomaly. One exceptionally trained individual doesn't represent the capabilities of an entire species." But Zex Thul wasn't convinced. In his centuries of military service, he had learned to recognize when an opponent was showing only the tip of their capabilities. The calm confidence of the human child, the quiet certainty of his master, the diplomatic poise of Ambassador Chen, none of it suggested desperate people showing off their only advantage. A chime from his communication system interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, you have an incoming message from the Gorathian delegation." The holographic image of Warchief Thrakos materialized in the center of the room. The massive alien's expression was troubled, lacking his usual aggressive confidence. "Zex Thul," Thrakos began without preamble, "we need to discuss what happened at the exhibition." "I assume you mean the human demonstration?" "I mean the implications of the human demonstration. My tactical staff has been running simulations, and the results are disturbing." Zex Thul gestured for privacy, and his aides quickly left the room. Thrakos's image flickered as he transmitted tactical data. "We fed the human child's movement patterns into our combat simulation systems. If those capabilities scale to adult warriors, if that level of precision and spatial awareness can be applied to modern weapons, the humans become a significant military factor." Zex Thul finished, understanding immediately. "More than significant. Our computer models suggest that human forces using that kind of training methodology could potentially match or exceed the combat effectiveness of technologically superior opponents." The implications hung in the air between them. Both commanders understood that galactic power structures were built on the assumption that technological advancement was the only meaningful measure of military capability. If that assumption was wrong, everything could change. "There's more," Thrakos continued. "I've been investigating human military history through their public databases. Zex Thul, their species has been refining combat techniques for over 50,000 years. Every few centuries, they develop new fighting systems, new training methods, new ways of turning biological capabilities into military advantages. And they've been doing this while most of the galaxy focused purely on technological development." Zex Thul mused. How many other capabilities might they have that we've dismissed as primitive? Before Thrakos could respond, another chime indicated an incoming priority message. Ambassador Chen's image appeared alongside the Gorathian war chief. Her diplomatic smile, not quite hiding her concern. Commander Zex Thul, War Chief Thrakos. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation developing that requires immediate attention. What kind of situation? Zex Thul asked. Several of the younger alien delegates have been challenging Kenji to further demonstrations. They seem to view his abilities as a personal challenge to their species' martial traditions. Thrakos growled deep in his throat. Foolish younglings. But I assume you're not contacting us merely to complain about diplomatic protocol violations? Chen's expression grew more serious. 3 hours ago, Prince Vextar of the Vorthan Empire formally challenged Kenji to a combat demonstration. The challenge was issued publicly, in front of representatives from over 20 species. Zex Thul felt his tactical instincts immediately engage. The Vorthans were a proud warrior species. Their royal family trained from birth in multiple combat disciplines. Prince Vextar was considered one of their finest fighters, enhanced with the latest bio-augmentation technology and equipped with weapons that could cut through starship hulls. The boy accepted? Thrakos asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Master Yamamoto attempted to decline on his behalf, but Kenji overruled him. The demonstration is scheduled for tomorrow, in the main arena. Zex Thul's mind raced through the possible outcomes. If the human child was defeated, it would reinforce the galaxy's assumptions about primitive versus advanced capabilities. But if he somehow managed to hold his own against a technologically enhanced alien warrior, Ambassador, he said carefully, are you certain your young representative understands what he's agreed to? Prince Vextar is not demonstrating with practice weapons. Vorthan combat doctrine involves actual lethal force. I've tried to explain the risks to him, Chen replied, her frustration evident. But Kenji seems to believe that backing down now would dishonor not just himself, but his entire tradition. Master Yamamoto supports his decision, though I can tell the old man is worried. After Chen disconnected, Zex, Thul, and Thrakos sat in contemplative silence for several moments. What do you think will happen? Thrakos finally asked. I think, Zex Thul said slowly, we're about to learn something very important about human capabilities. The question is whether we'll like what we discover. The next day, the main arena of Convergence Station was packed beyond capacity. Word of the challenge had spread throughout the diplomatic community, and representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness what many were calling either a demonstration of courage or a tragic example of youthful overconfidence. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering, capable of adapting to the environmental needs of multiple species. For today's event, it had been configured as a simple, circular space with energy barriers to protect the spectators from any weapons effects. Prince Vextar entered first, and the crowd murmured appreciatively at the display of Vorthan military technology. The prince was nearly 3 meters tall, his natural strength enhanced by biomechanical augmentations that were clearly visible beneath his ceremonial armor. He carried a quantum blade, a weapon that could cut through molecular bonds themselves, making it capable of slicing through virtually any material in the galaxy. The sight of such advanced weaponry sent whispers through the crowd. Many began to question the wisdom of allowing this demonstration to proceed. Then Kenji entered the arena. The contrast was striking. The 11-year-old human looked impossibly small compared to his opponent, wearing the same simple black outfit from the exhibition. He carried only the ancient katana, its plain steel blade seeming almost insulting when compared to the prince's quantum weapon. Master Yamamoto accompanied his student to the center of the arena, his weathered face showing no emotion as he performed what appeared to be a brief ritual, blessing the sword and speaking quietly to Kenji in their native language. Ambassador Chen stood in the diplomatic viewing area, her knuckles white as she gripped the railing. She had tried everything short of a direct order to stop this demonstration, but both Kenji and his master had been adamant. Prince Vextar activated his quantum blade, and the weapon hummed to life with a sound like controlled lightning. The energy field around the cutting edge was visible even to species with limited optical capabilities, glowing with barely contained power. "Young human," the prince called out, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustic systems. "I respect your courage, but I will not insult you by holding back. In Vorthan tradition, combat is sacred. It demands our absolute best effort." Kenji bowed deeply to his opponent, a gesture that seemed to surprise the prince. When he straightened, the transformation that had occurred during the exhibition happened again. The small boy disappeared, replaced by something focused and centered. "I understand, Your Highness. I would be honored to face your absolute best effort." A ceremonial bell chimed, and the demonstration began. Prince Vextar moved with the enhanced speed and strength that made Vorthans feared throughout the galaxy. His first attack was a direct thrust aimed at testing the human's reflexes. Fast enough to be challenging, but not immediately lethal. What happened next sent shockwaves through the watching crowd. Kenji didn't dodge the attack. Instead, he moved forward, stepping into the strike while simultaneously deflecting it with a motion so precise that the quantum blade's energy field never touched him. In the same fluid movement, the katana traced an arc that stopped just short of the prince's neck. The entire sequence lasted less than 2 seconds. Prince Vexistar froze, staring down at the primitive steel blade, hovering a hair's breadth from his throat. The crowd fell into stunned silence as they processed what they had just witnessed. "How?" the prince whispered, his enhanced combat systems still trying to analyze what had occurred. Kenji withdrew the katana and stepped back, returning to his ready stance. "Your weapon is faster than mine, Your Highness. But speed without direction is just movement. You telegraphed your intent with your body positioning before you moved." The Vorthan prince's eyes narrowed as his biomechanical enhancements fed him tactical data. "Again," he said, his voice now carrying deadly, serious intent. What followed was unlike anything the galactic community had ever witnessed. Prince Vextar unleashed a series of attacks that would have overwhelmed most opponents in the galaxy. His quantum blade moved in patterns too fast for many species to even perceive, creating geometric death zones of energy that should have been impossible to navigate safely. But Kenji flowed through the attacks like water finding its way between rocks. His movements seemed almost precognitive, as if he knew where the prince would strike before the prince himself had decided. The katana became a blur of steel, not just deflecting the quantum blade, but redirecting its energy in ways that turned the prince's own attacks into openings for counterstrikes. In the viewing area, Zex Thul found himself leaning forward despite himself. His military experience was screaming warnings about what he was witnessing. The human child wasn't just defending, he was analyzing, adapting, learning his opponent's patterns in real time, while engaged in lethal combat. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Eurelia, her species enhanced perception, allowing her to track more of the combat than most others could. "He's not just reacting to the attacks, he's predicting them." Ambassador Kethara materialized beside her through teleportation, her crystalline features reflecting the energy discharge from the quantum blade. "Look at his positioning," she said urgently. "Every deflection, every step. He's not just avoiding damage, he's controlling the flow of the battle." The realization hit the watching aliens like a physical blow. The human child wasn't fighting for survival, he was teaching. Every movement was designed to demonstrate something, to reveal another aspect of capabilities that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive. Prince Vexistar, to his credit, began to understand what was happening. His attacks became more thoughtful, less reliant on raw speed and power. He started trying to match the human's tactical approach, looking for patterns and weaknesses rather than simply overwhelming his opponent. The change in strategy immediately improved his performance. Several of his strikes came close to connecting, forcing Kenji to work harder to maintain his defensive flow. The crowd watched in fascination as the battle evolved from a mismatch into something approaching an actual duel between skilled opponents. But then Kenji shifted to offense. The katana moved in a pattern that seemed to wrap around the quantum blade's energy field. Finding angles of attack that shouldn't have existed, Prince Vextar found himself being pushed backward, his enhanced reflexes barely keeping pace with strikes that came from directions his tactical systems insisted were impossible. In the space of 30 seconds, Kenji landed a dozen touch attacks, gentle taps with the flat of his blade that marked spots where a killing blow could have been delivered. Each touch was perfectly placed to demonstrate that his opponent's armor, augmentations, and advanced weaponry provided no meaningful protection against someone who truly understood the principles of combat. The demonstration ended when Kenji simply stopped moving. He stepped back, lowered his katana, and bowed to Prince Vextar, who stood frozen in the center of the arena, with his quantum blade still humming with lethal energy. "Thank you for the honor of this match, Your Highness," Kenji said formally. "Your skill and courage are worthy of your reputation." Prince Vextar deactivated his weapon, his breathing heavy despite his biomechanical enhancements. For several moments, he simply stared at the human child who had just systematically demonstrated the inadequacy of everything the Vorthan Empire considered militarily superior. Finally, the prince spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the silent arena. "In all my years of training, in all my battles across the galaxy, I have never encountered anything like what you just showed me." He paused, his enhanced mind still processing the tactical implications of what had occurred. "Your weapon is primitive steel. Your body has no augmentations. Your reflexes are purely biological. By every measure we use to evaluate military capability, I should have been able to defeat you without effort." Kenji nodded respectfully. "Your Highness fought with great skill and honor. The fault lies not in your abilities, but in the assumptions about what makes a warrior effective." "Explain," Prince Vextar said simply. The human boy considered his words carefully before responding. "You fight with your equipment. I fight with my mind. Your training taught you to rely on your advantages: speed, strength, superior weapons. My training taught me to make all advantages irrelevant through superior understanding." The arena remained silent as the implications of this statement sank in. Species throughout the galaxy had spent centuries developing better weapons, better armor, better enhancement technologies. The idea that all of this could be made irrelevant through training and mental discipline challenged everything they thought they knew about combat. Master Yamamoto entered the arena and approached his student, pride evident in his weathered features. As he helped Kenji clean and sheath the katana, he spoke to the watching crowd. "What you have witnessed today is not magic or trickery. It is the result of dedicating one's life to understanding the fundamental principles that govern conflict. Every culture in the galaxy has warriors, but few have learned to create true masters of war." Ambassador Chen watched from the viewing area as representatives from dozens of species began urgent communications with their home governments. She realized that in the space of a single demonstration, humanity's position in the galactic community had fundamentally changed. They were no longer seen as a primitive species with outdated technology. They were now viewed as something potentially much more dangerous. A civilization that had spent millennia learning how to turn biological and mental capabilities into military advantages that even the most advanced technology couldn't simply overwhelm. As the crowd began to disperse, Zexthul remained in his seat, his tactical mind working through scenarios that suddenly seemed far more complex than they had an hour ago. If this was what human children could accomplish, what were their actual military forces capable of? And more importantly, how many other aspects of human society had the galaxy completely misunderstood? The demonstration had been intended to showcase the superiority of modern technology over ancient traditions. Instead, it had revealed that perhaps the galaxy needed to reconsider what advancement actually meant. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 48 hours after Prince Vextar's demonstration with the human child. Representatives from major civilizations gathered in the Grand Assembly Chamber aboard Convergence, their usual diplomatic protocols replaced by urgent strategic discussions that continued through the night cycles. Chancellor Mordun of the Hegemony Council called the session to order, his ancient features bearing the weight of 5,000 years of galactic politics. The chamber itself was a marvel of diplomatic engineering, with environmental controls adapted to accommodate dozens of different species' atmospheric requirements. Honored representatives, the Chancellor began, we convene this emergency session to address the implications of recent events involving the human delegation. What we witnessed 3 days ago challenges fundamental assumptions about military capability and technological superiority that have shaped galactic politics for millennia. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as holographic displays showed tactical analysis of Kenji's demonstration. Energy readings, movement patterns, and impact assessments filled the air above each delegation's seating area. War Chief Thrakos of the Gorathians stood first, his massive frame commanding immediate attention. Honored Chancellor, my military analysts have completed their assessment. If the capabilities demonstrated by this human child represent even a fraction of their species' potential, we may need to completely recalibrate our understanding of human military strength. Unquote. Lake Mansion. Unquote. 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 Fleet Admiral Kex Undra of the Nexarian Naval Command activated her delegation's tactical display. Our computer models indicate that human forces trained to these standards could potentially achieve victory ratios of 10-1 against conventionally equipped opponents. This is not a minor adjustment to our strategic calculations. This represents a fundamental shift in galactic military balance. From the crystalline platform that housed the Luxarian delegation, Ambassador Kethara materialized through her species' natural teleportation. The implications extend beyond military considerations. If humans have developed mental discipline and training techniques that can achieve such results, what other capabilities might they possess that we've dismissed as primitive? Dr. Eurelia, representing the Naxarian Science Collective, slithered to the center of the chamber. Esteemed colleagues, I have spent the past 2 days analyzing not just the demonstration itself, but the philosophical framework that produced it. Human civilization appears to have developed along a completely different trajectory than the rest of the galaxy. She activated a complex holographic display showing comparative development patterns. While we focused on technological advancement, better weapons, faster ships, more powerful energy sources, humans have been perfecting the biological and mental systems that utilize technology. They haven't just built better tools, they've built better tool users. The implications of this statement sent a wave of concerned discussion through the assembly. Technological advancement had been the basis of galactic hierarchy for as long as recorded history existed. The idea that there might be alternative paths to power challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which their entire civilization was built. Commander Zex Thule rose from the Vraxian delegation's seating area. Dr. Eurelia's analysis aligns with our military intelligence, but I believe we're still missing the larger picture. What we witnessed wasn't just superior training. It was the application of principles that most of our species have never considered. He gestured, and his own tactical displays activated. The human child didn't win through superior speed, strength, or technology. He won through superior understanding. He analyzed his opponent's capabilities, identified the underlying patterns that governed their behavior, and then exploited weaknesses that existed not in the technology itself, but in the assumptions behind how that technology was being used. Prince Vex Tar, who had been given permission to address the council despite his royal status, stepped forward. His biomechanical enhancements were visible beneath his formal diplomatic attire, reminders of the advanced technology that had proven inadequate against a simple steel blade. Honored representatives, he began, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. I have spent my entire life training with the finest weapons and enhancement technologies available to our civilization. I believed that superior tools would always triumph over inferior ones. He paused, his enhanced mind still processing the tactical lessons learned in the arena. What I discovered is that assumptions can become weaknesses. My reliance on technological advantages blinded me to tactical vulnerabilities. The human child saw those vulnerabilities and exploited them with precision that no computer system could match. Chancellor Mordoun leaned forward in his ancient seat. Prince, Vex, Tar. Are you suggesting that technological advancement has made us less capable warriors? Not less capable, Chancellor, but perhaps less adaptable. Our weapons think for us. Our armor protects us. Our enhancement systems respond for us. We have become dependent on external systems to supplement our capabilities, rather than developing our internal capabilities to supplement our systems. The observation struck at the heart of galactic military doctrine. For centuries, the standard approach had been to develop increasingly sophisticated technology to overcome battlefield challenges. The idea that this approach might have inherent limitations was profoundly disturbing to civilizations that had invested everything in technological supremacy. Ambassador Chen had been granted permission to address the council, and she now rose from the human delegation's modest seating area. Her diplomatic training helped her maintain composure despite the magnitude of the moment she was facing. "Honored representatives," she began, "I believe there may be some misunderstanding about what Kenji demonstrated. He is not a warrior in the traditional sense. He is a student, learning principles that my civilization has been developing for thousands of years." She activated her own display, showing images of human history and culture that most of the galactic community had dismissed as primitive curiosity. "What you call martial arts, we consider foundational education. The training that produced Kenji's abilities is available to any human who chooses to pursue it. It's not restricted to military personnel or enhanced individuals." The implication sent another wave of concerned murmurs through the assembly. If a civilian child could demonstrate such capabilities, what might actual human military forces be able to accomplish? Furthermore, Chen continued, the principles demonstrated in swordwork are applied throughout human society. Our pilots, our engineers, our scientists, our leaders, all receive training in focus, precision, adaptability, and mental discipline. We don't consider these to be special abilities. We consider them to be basic life skills. Fleet Admiral Kex Undra's tentacled form shifted uneasily in her environmental pod. "Ambassador Chen, are you telling us that your entire civilization possesses enhanced combat capabilities?" "I'm telling you that our civilization has focused on enhancing the individuals within it, rather than just the tools they use. A human with primitive equipment and proper training might accomplish things that seem impossible to someone dependent on advanced technology alone." Master Yamamoto, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, was granted permission to speak. The elderly teacher approached the center of the chamber, with the same quiet dignity he had shown throughout their stay on the station. "Honorable beings," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite his advanced age. "There appears to be confusion about what makes a civilization advanced. You measure advancement by the sophistication of your tools. We measure it by the wisdom and capability of the beings who use those tools." He gestured toward the various technological displays surrounding them. "Your weapons are indeed superior to our katana. Your ships are faster than ours. Your computers process information more quickly than our minds. But tools are only as effective as the understanding behind their use." Dr. Aurelia interrupted, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "Master Yamamoto, are you suggesting that technological advancement without corresponding mental development is somehow incomplete?" The old teacher smiled slightly. "I am suggesting that advancement without wisdom becomes a limitation rather than an advantage. Technology that makes you dependent rather than capable ultimately weakens rather than strengthens." War Chief Thrakos growled, his frustration evident. "But surely, technological superiority must count for something. A primitive blade cannot defeat a quantum cannon, cannot it?" Master Yamamoto asked quietly. "Your quantum cannon requires power sources, targeting systems, operator training, maintenance protocols. It is vulnerable to electromagnetic interference, system failures, supply line disruptions. The more sophisticated the technology, the more points of failure it possesses." He reached into his robes and withdrew a simple wooden practice sword, its surface worn smooth by countless hours of use. This beacon has no power source to fail, no targeting system to be confused, no maintenance requirements beyond basic care. In the hands of someone who truly understands its use, it remains effective regardless of circumstances. The demonstration was subtle but profound. Even in the most advanced technological environment in the galaxy, surrounded by beings whose civilizations spanned star systems, a piece of shaped wood remained relevant and useful. Chancellor Mordun processed the implications carefully. Master Yamamoto, you're describing a fundamentally different approach to technological development. Instead of replacing biological capabilities with mechanical ones, your species has enhanced biological capabilities to better utilize mechanical tools. That is one way to phrase it. Yes. Commander Zex Thul's tactical mind was working through scenarios that became more complex with each revelation. Ambassador Chen, if these capabilities are as widespread as you suggest, why hasn't your species sought to expand its influence in galactic affairs? With such advantages, you could potentially challenge any existing power structure. Ambassador Chen's response revealed perhaps the most significant difference between human and galactic civilization. Commander, expansion through conquest has never been our primary goal. We are more interested in understanding than controlling, in learning than dominating. She activated a display showing human exploration and diplomatic efforts throughout their brief membership in the galactic community. We came to the stars to discover new forms of life and intelligence, not to impose our will upon them. The capabilities you've witnessed are used primarily for self-improvement and protection, not aggression. Prince Vextar spoke up from his position near the Vorthan delegation. But surely you understand the strategic implications of what you've revealed? Other species will view these capabilities as potential threats, regardless of your intentions. We understand the concern, Chen replied. But consider this. If we possessed aggressive intentions, would we have revealed these capabilities in such a public forum? If we wanted to use surprise as a tactical advantage, would we have brought an 11-year-old child to demonstrate our methods to the galaxy's military leadership? The question hung in the air as representatives began to understand the deeper implications of the human approach. The demonstration hadn't been a threat display. It had been an educational opportunity offered freely to anyone willing to learn. Master Yamamoto stepped forward again. If I may, I would like to make an offer to this assembly. Chancellor Mordoon nodded permission, though his ancient features showed wariness about what might come next. The principles that created Kenji's abilities are not secret knowledge. They are not exclusive to human physiology or psychology. Any being capable of learning can develop these capabilities, adapted to their own species' strengths and limitations. The chamber erupted in discussion as the implications of this offer began to sink in. The humans weren't just demonstrating superior capabilities. They were offering to teach them. Dr. Irelia was the first to respond formally. Master Yamamoto, are you suggesting that these mental discipline techniques could be adapted to other species? I am suggesting that the underlying principles, focus, precision, adaptability, the integration of mind and body, are universal concepts that any intelligent species can develop according to their own nature. Fleet Admiral Kexundra's communication tentacles writhed with excitement. The strategic applications. The strategic applications. If our forces could be trained to think tactically, rather than just following pre-programmed responses. War Chief Thrakos leaned forward, his military mind immediately grasping the possibilities. Enhanced situational awareness. Improved decision-making under pressure. Reduced dependence on vulnerable technological systems. But it was Ambassador Kethara who identified the most significant implication. This isn't just about military applications. If these principles can improve how beings interact with technology, think through problems, and adapt to changing circumstances, we're talking about potentially revolutionizing our entire civilization. Ambassador Chen smiled at the reaction. That, honored representatives, is why we chose to share this knowledge, rather than keep it secret. We believe that all species benefit when each species reaches its full potential. Young Kenji, who had remained silent throughout the proceedings, was given permission to speak. Despite his age, he addressed the assembly with the same calm authority he had shown in the arena. "Honorable beings," he said. "The path of the sword teaches us that true strength comes not from defeating others, but from overcoming the limitations within ourselves. The galaxy is vast enough for all species to grow strong, without diminishing others." As the emergency session concluded, representatives began urgent communications with their home governments. The implications of what they had learned would reshape galactic politics, military doctrine, and technological development for generations to come. But perhaps more importantly, they had discovered that advancement wasn't just about building better tools. It was about becoming better beings, capable of using those tools with wisdom, precision, and purpose. The humans had offered them a gift more valuable than any technology: the knowledge that they could become more than they currently were. And in that offering, they had demonstrated a form of power that no weapon could match: the power to inspire others to transcend their own limitations. As the great chamber emptied and representatives returned to their quarters to process what they had learned, Commander Zex Thul remained behind with a small group of military leaders. They stood around the simple katana display, studying the blade that had started everything. "How did we miss this?" War Chief Thrakos asked quietly. "Because we were looking for the wrong things," Zex Thul replied. "We measured their technology and found it lacking. We never thought to measure the beings using the technology." Prince Vextar touched his biomechanical enhancements thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's not too late to learn, if they're willing to teach." "The question," Zex Thul said, his tactical mind already working through the implications, "is whether we're willing to be students. Learning from humans will require us to admit that our approach to advancement has been incomplete." As they discussed the future, none of them noticed Kenji and Master Yamamoto in a nearby observation alcove, watching the galaxy's military leaders grapple with concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew about power and progress. "Do you think they'll truly learn, Sensei?" Kenji asked quietly. Master Yamamoto smiled, his weathered face reflecting decades of teaching experience. "Some will, Kenji-kun, and those who do will teach others. Change begins with a single step, then spreads like ripples in a pond." The old teacher looked out at the stars beyond the station's viewports. "Perhaps that's the real power of the Way of the Sword, not to defeat enemies, but to transform them into friends willing to walk the path of improvement together." In the days that followed, formal requests began arriving from dozens of civilizations, asking for cultural exchange programs and training partnerships with humanity. The species that had once laughed at a primitive blade now sought to learn from the principles it represented. And in the end, that transformation proved to be more powerful than any weapon, even one that could cut through the assumptions of an entire galaxy.